Joining us now is Peter Schaffer. He is the president and founder of Authentic Athletics, and he is the agent for one recently instated Randy Gregory. You can follow him on Twitter at Peter J. Schaffer. Peter, how you doing?
Well, I'm here in Colorado, and it was 95 degrees yesterday. It's snowing. And so it's my understanding, because mostly people that are now populating the mountains, towns of Colorado from Texas, that this is something about their karma.
They brought it to you guys. Yeah, they
ruined our entire state. You know, you can't go up the mountains because of all these people from Texas. You can't rent cars, so they've rented all the cars. They're not wearing masks, and now it's snowing in September.
Listen, I lived in Denver, and I worked at Channel 7 News there for 3 years, and I had Texas license plates for my first 2 years, and I've never dealt with more obnoxious drivers on the road that reacted so negatively just because of my Texas license plate. Like, it was very hostile for me to live there at times, Peter. So I know all about Denver.
They say out here you can always tell someone from Texas. You just can't tell them much.
So accurate.
That's what they say out here. Yeah. There seems to be quite a rivalry. It's a shame that University of Colorado went to the Pac-12, because when Colorado, Texas, it was a rivalry built on states and geography, and that's what rivalries are all about.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Texas would have beat Colorado in that Big 12 title game at Texas Stadium had Major Applewhite been allowed to start the game instead of have to come in the second half. So
Fun fact, my ex-boyfriend was the quarterback at the time, Bobby Pesavento.
Wow.
So I was always like, this, it just didn't feel right dating him after all of that, because I was like, you sort of eliminated my team, man, and if Colorado of all schools.
Bobby's a very nice young man.
That's so great guy. But enough about my personal life. Let's talk about Randy's, that has been such a subject of fodder for so long. There's some stuff we can get into, Peter. I know there's some stuff we can't. But for people that didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, specifically with this latest chapter, what can you tell us that we weren't seeing out there about the links that Randy was trying to go through to get in the league and some of the pushback that he was getting?
Well, it's always interesting to me that when someone gets suspended for alcohol or narcotics, or in this case marijuana, that most companies, like if you're working for ESPN and you've got an addiction problem, they give you help and you get treatment, and you go to NA or AA. It might be you keep your job, you keep your personality, you keep your sort of I am who I am, working, you feel like you're accomplishing something, providing for your family. The NFL says, okay, you're suspended, you can't go to the facility, you can't earn a living, and you can't play the sport that you love. All the while, you're supposed to be dealing with these addiction problems. And usually addiction problems, and I'm not a doctor, psychiatrist, but being an agent long enough to get a few skins on the wall, addiction comes from stress points in life. Anxiety coming from, are you successful, are you not successful, how are you perceived? And to take away people's financial wherewithal, ability to earn a living, and sort of, mantra, I'm a football player, and then still ask them to deal with addiction issues, that's tough now. And Randy had to do it all by himself, since he signed me last summer 19, early in the summer. It was really just he and I dealing with these issues, and a local counselor named Dr. Dina Hadazi.
I am curious, for a lot of people that don't understand the uniqueness of Randy Gregory, and not to simplify it to this extent, but I think a lot of fans just think this is a guy that's got a pot problem and can't follow the rules. Can you clarify what is the struggle for Randy Gregory, and without giving too much away from patient-client confidentiality, what are some of the stuff?
We've already gone into this. I live in Colorado, so what's a pot problem? In Colorado, a pot problem is when they're charging too much per ounce at the local dispensary where it's legal to buy. That's a pot problem out here. So, I think that some of the issues, and I don't smoke marijuana. I've got two, teenage kids, and when you have teenage kids in Colorado, you have to deal with this thing head on. It's not something that you can put in the back drawer, because it's there. It's in the schools. You drive to school, the logos, the green logos. You can buy marijuana as easy as you can buy beer in this state, maybe even easier. So you say a pot problem, like it's 30 years ago, and they're putting people in jail for life for having, ounce bags of weed. Here it's legal. It's part of the social fabric of our society out here in Colorado. And so I don't know if there is a pot problem, right? I think that people sometimes get used to it, just like, you go home and have a glass of wine, or, Bobby, you have a glass of tequila, whatever, your flavor of the night is. And so I don't know if it's a pot problem. The problem becomes when someone like the league says you can't do it and you still do it, okay? Because that becomes a barrier to entry, or the reason, that they're requiring it. And the union, NFLPA, has allowed the league to suspend players as part of the collective bargaining process. I think that Randy's has never been, I don't know if you can even be addicted to marijuana. I'm not that kind of doctor. I have a book here, I'll have to find it, on the whole testing process of marijuana. It's called You're in Trouble. One of the greatest titles of any book. You're in Trouble. It talks about, marijuana testing. So I think that, but his issues really have been dealt with so that he's not smoking marijuana now, because that would keep him or preclude him from playing in the league. A lot of it came from a social anxiety situation he's had. Just because you're famous and a celebrity doesn't mean you're comfortable in public.
When you look at, we saw Randy expressing before the reinstatement that he had a lot of frustration with the logistics and a lot of the hurdles that were seemingly in place for him to get back. I believe that was sometime in July that he had talked about that. What were some of those issues, and was there miscommunication there? Were there things you had to fight the league on? What was happening with that?
Well, without breaching confidentiality, obviously there's a pandemic going on, and there were some logistics involved in drug testing that had to be ironed out so players can test. When you have a drug test, whether it's for the, every player does it at training camp, or during the off season when testers come to a person's house, normally, they interact. Well, now you have a pandemic, and so what are the rules? How can you collect a sample of someone that's outside the bubble so that the tester doesn't bring the virus into the player, and or the player doesn't abnormally put the tester's health at risk? So those are some of the issues that took some time for the league and us and the union to work out so that everybody was safe. So there were a bunch of sort of unique circumstances surrounding not just Randy, but other players and the program and COVID.
What was this about Randy having a hard time getting a hold of the Players Association? In other words, looking for their backing. He was pretty public about his frustrations, and ultimately it looks like the two sides were able to talk at some point in order to get this approved by the league. Walk us through what was going on with that.
Well, without going into too many details, ultimately, D. Murray Smith, the executive director of the union, and J.C. Treader, who's the president of the union, stood up for Randy with Roger Goodell and Jeff Pash and Todd Jones at the NFL and Kevin Manera. And we all got on sort of the same page. And I think that when the NFL saw that, D and JC were behind Randy, and that's because of the great steps that Randy has made towards, rehabilitating himself and getting to be in a good place in his life. And that I think that had a great effect on changing the NFL league office's perception and saying, okay, we should give this guy another chance.
There was an issue that had been reported after the 2018 season, after the suspension had occurred. There were these reports about the Cowboys were trying to, sign Randy to some sort of an extension or do something to roll him some bonus money, and that never got clarified as to whether that was allowed or not. What's the exact status of Randy's contract right now? How much is left on that? I know some of it's told at some point, but how much is left on his contract? Is he restricted free agent at the end of that deal? Where does that stand right now?
We're working through the contract right now with Adam and Todd Williams at the Cowboys, and that's not going to be an issue. He's going to be a Cowboy, hopefully, for his entire career.
Jerry hopes so. I mean, Jerry certainly has done his work to keep him in the building.
Well, and at some point, Jerry deserves to get every home field advantage because of the fact that he has, stuck with it. And I think that Jerry has a track record. You look what he's doing with Josh Price Brent. I mean, he gets a very unfortunate situation, and Jerry hired him as a scout and gave him a chance. Now, because of Josh's work ethic and track record and all that stuff, he's earned the right to stay there. But Jerry, he's very misunderstood, and I think that the people that know him, know he's a great businessman and know he's always out for the Cowboys. But gosh, he is pretty loyal to his players, and if he puts his arm around you, that's it. You better live up to him putting his arm around you, because he's going to take care of you if you take care of him.
Well, and as he also cautioned reporters about Ezekiel Elliott, he's earned the right, correct? But we have certainly seen that. What I wanted to ask you, too, is I did love seeing Josh Brent being referenced in Randy Gregory's process. What did Josh Brent have to do? And if a lot of people don't recall, some of the fans, Josh Brent, of course, involved in the DUI that led to the death of his teammate. His teammate's mother wished for the Cowboys to support him and help him rehabilitate his life despite it all. And to your point, it looks like he's done a very solid job. He had one setback 2 years ago at a Wendy's. But with that being said, I think it's been a positive influence having the Cowboys around him. How has he been a positive influence for Randy?
Josh is an outstanding person. He definitely made a tragic mistake, and he's more than paid for it, and he will probably pay for it for the rest of his life. But I think surrounding Randy with people like that is what's putting Randy in a really good place. It just can't be surrounding himself with me. Nobody would want to talk to me every day, and certainly nobody would want me to be their psychologist or counselor. That's not going to end well. I'm not that type of warm and fuzzy kind of guy that you want to be, giving all your problems to. But, like his counselor, Dr. Hadazi, is doing a wonderful job. Josh, I just think that surround yourself with good people. The more good people you surround yourself with, the better chance you have to succeed, whether you have problems going in or not. A lot of these young men go into this league with, their eyes wide open, and they get, we talked about earlier, they get hit by a 2x4 from all different directions. So when you surround yourself with good people, you increase your odds of succeeding.
What is it that Randy? I think there's some confusion over this. Everybody knows that there's going to reach a point.
How come he's the only one wearing a headset?
I know it's.
Look, I've got the fancy setup here, man.
She's NFL Network there. She's got the lav mic and the piece, and
it's like I got a home cam, just like our insider boys.
Exactly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she's big time. That's it. She's just one of these 1%ers. And
whatever.
So,
I set up my home cam.
Headset.
Mine is a home cam on a budget, but yes, that's why he's got the fan. He's the radio guy. I'm the TV girl, so we're kind of representing the two genres here.
I'm just wondering why. I got the short end of the technology stick.
Well, Peter, you've got a good lighting in there. This is better than some of the lighting that we've had with our guest.
Well, this is all natural lighting here in Colorado.
It's the reflection from the snow, the piles of snow. It's just beaming some white in there.
It's coming out the window. I can see it now. It's crazy. September 8th.
So I think everybody has seen that Randy's allowed to return to practice. I think it's October 5th. He's allowed to play again week 7. What is it he's allowed to do right now? And what limitations are there in his involvement with the team right now?
Well, and to piggyback off that, Peter, because the one thing that's been coming up is why this arbitrary date of week 7 is when he can rejoin the team. Can you explain the acclimation process too?
Well, I can't explain the rationale for the dates, but I can't. That's up the wizard. But right now, the key is for him to get in shape. He's in good shape, like get in football shape, learn a new system, get with the coaches, understand the whole COVID system, and be ready to go for that 6th game. And that's the plan. And I know he was at the facility today. They got him working out every day. He's in meetings. And he's doing whatever, the league is allowing him to do. And he's monitoring it very carefully. Whenever you're playing for Coach Tom Sula, social distancing was always in play with him. Because, he's sweating and spitting anyway. Nobody wanted to get within 6 feet of him before COVID. So
it's so funny you say that, because I 1000% noticed that the other day through my binoculars because they keep us so far away, Peter. And of course, the fans aren't getting to see much with some of these tight shots. But that is something fun to watch. Okay, so he is allowed in the building. He's able to lift. He's in the meeting rooms. He's
Correct.
just not allowed to play right now. Got it.
So practice and playing, that is literally the only limitations he has. And otherwise, take part in anything else.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, part of it has to do with sort of what the union talked about, the 14 days before they can put pads on. You're talking, and those are talking about players that haven't played for 8 months. Randy hasn't played for 18 months. So, we're just trying to monitor it to make sure that when he comes back, when you go in the NFL, people like to say you go from 0 to 100. I like to say you go from 0 to Indy 500. You're going, forget about 100. You're going 0 to 220 right away. When you've got to go against guys like Tyron Smith, 330 pounds, and he's trying to, put you on your rear end, you better be in shape, you better be ready to go, because you're going to be pretty sore the next day. It's funny because I play lacrosse, even and my son plays lacrosse.
I see the stick.
That's the Twitter profile. Yeah, he's in full game mode on his Twitter profile.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
But we hadn't played because of COVID for 8 months, even as in the men's leagues, and our national tournaments were canceled. And I went out and played in July, the first game, and I was in pretty good shape, working out and running every day. But I'll tell you something. That first game, I came home at noon after playing. I couldn't get off the couch. It was just, playing games, and that's just men's league. Forget about what do you think in the NFL, and we're going to see it this Sunday, I think, in the games. You better have players on pitch counts, and these players they're going to be wiped out after. They have not played at that intensity level in 9 months, and you can't replicate it in camp, and you can't replicate it in practice. This thing is going to be interesting, and I guarantee you there's going to be some tremendous comebacks this weekend, because teams are they're going to run out of gas a lot faster than they normally did. You might be up by 21 going to the fourth quarter, and then coaches are going to try to put their foot on the pedal, and there ain't going to be no gas left.
Now, I know when the first time he came back, a lot of people were skeptical that he wasn't going to be in playing shape, and he had a pretty dynamic start coming back. I mean, Bobby, you're the stats guy. It was a good comeback, was it not?
Yeah, I mean, he the last half of the season, he generated more sacks and quarterback hits than DeMarcus Lawrence did for the team.
There you go.
He definitely hit his stride quickly.
And so, but what we had heard was before he came back that time around, he had been working, had a job. And so I'm curious, what has he been doing to make money? Because I think the misconception is that these guys, they enter the league and, their bank accounts are flush with cash. His is obviously because of the stop-start and, because of some of the fees that come along with some of this. He's not cash flush. And then, we have a guy like Alden Smith who was working out, at Unbreakable Performance with Jay Glazer, and then Brandon Tucker here in Dallas. What has he been doing away from the field, Peter?
Well, Randy's had a son was born last October. He's been working some jobs, worked at Amazon in a distribution center, and he's been working out religiously every day. And it's the hardest thing in the world to work out every day on your own to prepare to play in the NFL. And so, like I said, it's tough to go from 24-hour fitness to the star overnight. So there'll be a little acclimation period, but he's ready to go. And he's excited. I think he's in a great place. I'm excited for when you guys get to interview him and you'll see a totally different person.
And we were going to have him today, but of course the Cowboys want to have the PR splash, and I'm cool with that. But I got to ask you, when you guys got the green light, because I know you guys were getting frustrated there a couple weeks ago, how did it make Randy feel, and how did it make you feel to know that you've been there with him this last year trying to get this thing going for him, knowing here's a guy that's been working at Amazon, he's been working out at the 24-hour fitness, he just wants another chance?
I think there is a sense of satisfaction that you're able to help someone achieve a dream and get back to where they were. And those are the phone calls, that as an agent that you enjoy making. There are two types. You also get the phone call, hey, you got to tell your player he's been released, or that type of deal. You get the phone call in the draft, you're about to be drafted by the Cowboys, you're about to be whatever. Those are great calls. And so getting the letter on the email Friday, and first of all, when you get the letter, the NFL always sends the letter as an attachment. So it's sort of like now you have to unwrap the present or the bow, and it could be either the thumbs up or the thumbs down letter. So you're like, all right, I got the letter. Now I got to open it up. And you never know what it says until you open it up. And this one, was a positive letter. And you're like, all right, I now get to call Randy and, tell him. And after having talked to him, 1, 2, 3 times a day for the last year, he wasn't expecting the letter to have come. There's no, you don't get a letter, you don't get a text saying, okay, the letter's coming on Friday. Sometimes you think it's coming on Monday, it doesn't come for 2 weeks. So the letter came, and I'm like, I read it. I'm like, all right, I'm going to call, I'm going to call Randy. And then so we decided, he was excited, and you could hear him whooping and hollering in the background, and that's always a joy to hear, and that's satisfaction. And then we decided that we were, sort of going to tease it a little. And so he was going to put a picture of him in a cowboy, him playing with the Cowboys, and just put that up on Twitter and let that tease. And then next thing you know, someone must have leaked it because we started getting calls from media all over. But the idea was sort of teasing.
We're sorry for harassing you, Peter.
Yes, you didn't have the exclusivity on that. I was not monogamous on Friday.
So Peter, I got to ask, because I know some people who watch it are going to say, hey, wait, we left off that question there. But I'm curious, because you did reference there that when I asked about where his contract situation is right now, you said that you're working through things right now with Todd Williams, Adam Pacifica, the Cowboy salary cap guy. Is that to get a handle on what exactly his contract status is, or are you saying that there's talks or some sort of negotiations to try and potentially extend him?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts to a player that's still on his rookie deal and is set in what tantamount to his 7th season. So we're working through all that now. He only has 2 credited seasons, so he wouldn't even be he would be a restricted free agent if he played this year and next year. So there are a lot of moving parts, but we're working through that right now.
We've only talked about probably 2% of this whole story and the saga. Do you anticipate that one day Randy's going to tell the whole story?
I hope so, because I think that it'll give people a greater perspective on what he went through. I think it also could be beneficial to a lot of younger players and students, male and female, that are going through similar anxiety issues and how to deal with them and what to do and what not to do. And, and maybe people around him to realize that he might be masking something and he's crying out for help. And if we can help save some other people, from these situations, then we've all done ourselves a service.
Before we let you go, Ron Slavin obviously.
Wait. Let me go. I can just hit this.
You could do this for hours.
I'm gone.
He's like, bye. Now you guys see what we deal with some of these agents, for those watching on YouTube, guys like this guy. So I wanted to ask you, with Alden Smith, we had Ron Slavin on a couple of weeks ago after his reinstatement, and he talked about being personally invested in making sure that, everything, he stays on the level, that the alcohol is not an issue, and he is heavily involved in his life, and there is a structure in place to make sure that
Ron's drinking the alcohol for Alden now?
It wouldn't shock me, quite frankly.
No, he's a good man.
But in all seriousness, what are some of the mechanics in place to make sure that there's some structure for Randy as well? Because I got to imagine that we're on the last leg here as it relates to the comeback story that is Randy Gregory. As one coach told me, once you get out of the league, it's really hard to get back in. Do you kind of feel like this is his last go?
I don't think like that in any part of my life. I try to, we've been through a lot up here, and we just try to stay positive and think about what we can do moving forward. So I don't look at it like anything's the last. You always, what was the expression? As long as there's time on the clock, you still have a chance to win. So I never look at it like that. I think that, I think we have Randy. It starts with Randy, and if nobody's going to succeed in treatment or succeed in changing their lives or their patterns unless they want to. And I think he definitely wants to. I think he's demonstrated that, and so that's where it all starts. And then to put, pieces in place around him. He's got a family. His parents have moved down to Dallas. They've got jobs down there. they've been great. Putting them around with Josh Price and other mentors in the building, Brian Wansley and Will McClay, those guys. I mean, and then being around his teammates, like I said, Dr. Dazi's fantastic. And I guess when he runs out of people to call, he picks the phone up and calls me. Or
Bobby.
Wow.
Or Bobby, it's maybe it's a coin toss. Who knows?
But I guess my question is, so he is still meeting with his psychiatrist, and will there be frequent? Counselor? How does the drug testing work right now, since they've sort of decriminalized it too?
Did you just go with the air quotes?
I did, because I mean it didn't criminalize it, but that's what I'm going to say here. Decriminalized it.
Well, I think what you have is the new policy started with new collective bargaining agreement, and I wouldn't say it's decriminalized because it's never was criminalized. The NFL couldn't put you in jail, but it has changed the threshold levels for positive tests. It's changed the possible punishment from suspensions to fines. So there's that involved, and that's part of the stuff that we're working through too with the league right now. It's not as simple as ABC or 1, 2, 3 buckle my shoe, that type of stuff. There's definitely a lot in it. There's a lot in it for Alden and for all the players similarly situated. And you hope. And the one thing is too now, you send a guy to the Cowboys with these problems, they're going to give him every possible resource to succeed. Also, they're going. If he's got to see a counselor, there's no open. Well, that's a problem. No, let him see a counselor. If the Cowboys and Jerry, they get a lot of grief, but they definitely support their players. Not just financially, but emotionally, in every possible way they can.
Well, Peter, I appreciate your time. I know that you've been exceedingly busy lately. I'm sorry that Tom Pelissero and I drove you nuts during all of this, but I'm glad that there was some good news to report, and I know Bobby and I both are really rooting for Randy.
What was that?
It wasn't Tom that was driving me nuts. I don't know why he would get thrown on the bus for that. I think that was deflecting someone else's issues.
You're the best, Peter. Thank you so much for jumping on the show.
I appreciate being on your show, Bobby, and anytime you want, just give me a holler.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you would do us a favor, hit subscribe over here. And if you want more Cowboys content, you can check it out over here. Thanks again for watching.